A fire in a 118-square-foot room killed a 69-year-old man last night and forced 300 people to evacuate from a single building in Hong Kong. And everything about that room was completely legal. The victim, surnamed Chu, couldn't walk without assistance. When the fire broke out on the 13th floor of the Man Yuen Building in Jordan, he had nowhere to go. 4 other residents, aged 43 to 78, were injured trying to escape the same subdivided flat. This is what Hong Kong calls a subdivided flat, a regular apartment carved into multiple micro-units, each barely larger than a parking space. 220,000 people live this way. Not in emergency shelters or temporary housing, but as their permanent address in one of the world's wealthiest cities. The average subdivided unit measures 11 square meters. That's smaller than the minimum space allocated to a prisoner in a Hong Kong jail cell. The mechanism that creates this isn't a housing shortage in the traditional sense, it's a legalized carving operation. A landlord takes a 500-square-foot apartment and divides it into 4 or 5 separate units. Each gets its own rental contract. The building was designed with one exit strategy, one set of fire alarms, one escape route for one family. Now it houses 5 families, none of whom can get out fast enough when something ignites. Mr. Chu's death happened hours before Hong Kong's Fire Services Department announced they're extending their fire safety inspection program for another 2 years. The original plan was 2 months. They've now committed to checking 5,000 more buildings because the first sweep found fire alarm defects in 53 buildings and issued nearly 1,200 summonses. The extension came after the deadliest residential fire in Hong Kong's modern history, the Wang Fuk Court blaze in Tai Po last November that killed 168 people. That fire revealed something officials already knew but hadn't acted on. Buildings designed for a certain number of occupants become death traps when you triple the population density without changing the fire safety infrastructure. Here's the legal paradox: subdivided flats were never illegal. The government only introduced minimum standards this year. On March 1, 2026, the Basic Housing Units Ordinance took effect, requiring that any new subdivided unit must be at least 86 square feet with proper windows and toilets. Landlords who rent non-compliant units now face fines up to $38,000 and 3 years in prison. But that law doesn't retroactively fix the 110,000 existing subdivided units where people already live. 1/4 of those, 27,500 units, are smaller than the new legal minimum. The government's official target is to eliminate all subdivided flats by 2049. That's 23 years from now. For context, the average wait time for public housing in Hong Kong is currently 5.5 years, and that number keeps climbing. The math doesn't work. Even if construction accelerates dramatically, tens of thousands of families will spend the next 2 decades in rooms where a mobility-impaired person can't escape a fire. What Mr. Chu experienced in his final moments was the collision of 3 systemic failures. First, the housing market priced him out of any dwelling with adequate space and safety features. Second, subdivision created a dwelling that turned a containable fire into a fatal trap. Third, the fire safety infrastructure, the alarms, the exits, the ventilation, was designed for a building with far fewer occupants. When 300 people need to evacuate simultaneously from a structure meant for 80 families, the corridors become kill zones. The investigation into Mr. Chu's death is still ongoing. Firefighters haven't released the ignition source. But the cause doesn't really matter, because the same conditions exist in thousands of other buildings across Hong Kong. The Fire Services Department can inspect and fine and extend their operations for as many years as they want, but every night, 220,000 people go to sleep in subdivided flats that weren't designed to keep them alive in an emergency. Hong Kong's government keeps announcing plans and timelines and ordinances. But Mr. Chu didn't need a plan for 2049. He needed a door he could reach and stairs he could navigate and a building that treated his life as if it mattered more than maximizing rental yield per square foot. The question isn't whether Hong Kong can eventually eliminate subdivided flats. The question is how many more people will die in rooms smaller than prison cells before that happens.